And let's get going. All right, guys, welcome to Metal. This is what we call Metal Connect. And this is where we meet somebody that spent time with us on the Saturday's Metal, at Saturday's Metal. We asked them to stay over on Wednesday so we could dive deeper into what they are, who they are, and you get a chance to ask them questions. Now, I've been very fortunate because Chris Voss, when I met him through, it was Fred Joyle, I didn't really know who he was. Gave me the book, had the book sit on the shelf for a couple of months, and then one day I go, yeah, I'll read it. And after reading it, I was amazed. It was incredible. And then when his Masterclass came out a couple of months later, actually about a year and a half later, it was one of those things where I got to rediscover Chris. I also am in a men's group that Chris is part of, and I get to meet Chris at a personal level, and he really is what's called either all my Yiddish friends will say a mensch. I'm going to say a class act, but he is really a quality guy. And I'm honored to have him join us. Let's give it up for Mr. Chris Voss. Hey, Chris. Chris, I got you unmuted. You're on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate those kind words. It's
true.
I'm grateful for your friendship.
Well, same here. Actually, I think our friendship's only at the beginning. Oh, there we go. Got Milo holding up your book. How many languages is your book in, Chris?
27, maybe 30 countries, 27 languages.
Wow. Now, one thing that you said a while back was you really thought it was interesting being in LA or in New York, because as you're walking around, people actually recognize you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And if you're reading a negotiation book too, I mean, you're probably an entrepreneur, you're probably putting something together. So, it'd be nice if it was 17-year-old girls that were recognizing me, but they wouldn't have anything.
18-year-old girls. Let's just make sure. Okay.
I'm from Iowa. 17.
Yeah, it would probably be great since you're a single guy, but I think I may have had that solved as of today, which I'll talk to you about later on too.
Right.
Chris, let's step back before we dive into the book and what's going on today. Let's go all the way back. FBI, how did you get involved with the FBI?
Yeah, well, based on my father's disappointment that he paid for a college degree and I went out and got a job that only required a high school diploma. I mean, right after I got out of college, I applied to the police department. I wanted to be a cop. And my father finally reconciled himself to the idea that I was going to stay in law enforcement. So he introduced me to a guy with the Secret Service. Like I said, I grew up in Iowa. And I met this guy from the Secret Service. And he said, I've traveled all over the world working for the Secret Service. And I remember at the time thinking, somebody paid you to travel all over the world? I haven't been out of Iowa. I'll take that job.
Awesome.
I got in with the feds, and that one thing led to another.
All right. But the one thing led to another. You worked as a cop in Kansas City, I believe, right?
KCMO, yeah.
And what was Kansas City like being a cop? What's it like being a cop in Kansas City?
It's a good town. Kansas City's a really good town. Very progressive police department. The crazy thing at the time, and it might still be the case, KCPD had a better computer system than the FBI did. I mean, that's how progressive they were. It's a great place to work. It's a good town.
But did you have like the regulars, like the regular, I don't know, guy that robbed, the regular hooker, the regular, I mean, did you have your regular thugs?
You had some frequent flyer customers. Yeah, you had repeat customers. They were always very interesting. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned about your dad earlier. Did your dad ever get to experience you being a cop? Did he ever go on a drive along?
We went on a ride along one time. I got my father in the back seat. I got a partner in front with me. Went in an unmarked car. We're about 3 blocks from the state line road, the state line between Missouri and Kansas. Any bad guy hanging out on state line road, you knew they were wanted because they were going to try to run for the border to get away from it. And we spotted a prostitute named Debbie Turner. And Debbie was a regular customer. She was a frequent flyer. So I'd already run her in the computer, and I knew she wasn't wanted. But I knew if she was down by the state line, that she figured she was. And as soon as she spotted us from about a half a block away, in 5-inch spike high heels, made up, dressed to the nines, she takes off at a dead run for the state line border. And I go about 3 miles an hour so she can run the whole way before we stop her. And as soon as she gets across the border, I walk up to one side, she's on the other. And I say, hey, Debbie, I'm sorry, I already ran you the computer. You're not wanted. She's like, oh. And she comes walking over and she starts to chat it up with us. Now, Debbie was really good at patting you down very innocently. You know, most cops carry backup. Some cops didn't wear bulletproof vests, and so she'd brush up against you. She was checking me for extra guns and bulletproof vests. And interestingly enough, Debbie had a master's degree in sociology, and she's cussing up a storm. So she looks at the guy in the back seat of the car, not knowing it's my dad. She goes, "Who's this?" And I said, "Hey, it's Police Commissioner Smith. He's out on a ride along with us tonight." And she goes, "Oh, well, I'm going to use my language. I got to watch my language. I got to use my education." So she's talking to us, and finally, I can't get rid of her. I said, "Debbie, the car's getting ready to go to the police station. We're going to the precinct. And if you're still sitting on my car when it moves, you're going too." So she hops off, and as we drive away, she reaches into the car. She grabs my dad by the cheek, and she says, "Commissioner Smith, you're really cool, really cute." And we drive away. And my dad goes, "Wow, that was cool. Let's find another one."
Did you rise to the level of the highest level at the police department there, or did you get frustrated and decide you just couldn't grow anymore?
I just, they moved me from one precinct to another that I wasn't built for. The first precinct I was at was all street crime. Second precinct was all residential neighborhood. It was just meant for a more meticulous person than I am. So I got a little bored. And the Bureau advertised that it was having its first $1 billion budget in its history. I knew enough about budgets to know that meant salaries and hiring, and they were hiring a ton of folks, and I snuck in the door with everybody else.
Got it. So what was the FBI about? How did you get there?
Yeah, it was cool. Quantico's a cool place. It's where the academy is. It's where lives are transformed one way or another. I mean, you go down there to the academy, you show up, you're a regular Joe citizen. You walk out of there 4 months later, you're an FBI agent. That's not a small change. You're carrying a gun, you go everywhere with a gun. I mean, it takes some getting used to. So every day at the academy, you're running, you're working out, you're firing guns, you're in the classroom. They're hitting you hard on all three all the time, getting you ready to do it when you get out. It's a pretty cool place.
Is it like the TV show Quantico?
I haven't watched any of those shows. There's a little bit of truth sprinkled in each one of them. Interestingly enough, not long after I went through, which was a long time ago, they actually shot Silence of the Lambs at the academy. So Jodie Foster, they shot that at the academy. It's a pretty close depiction. There were actually FBI agents that were in the film. They signed a release. An FBI agent can take a side temporary job if they're not compensated. They had to let them be uncompensated actors to appear in the film. Some people I know were in that film, and that was fairly close to what really happened at the academy.
The intense side of what Silence of the Lambs were. Did you feel that being in the FBI? Did you have cases like that?
When you get onto something, when you're really after something, it moves like a glacier, but you feel like if you don't catch up, something bad is going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, nobody from the academy ever actually comes out of the academy to chase anybody, but when you're after somebody, when you're on somebody's trail like that, yeah, there's quite a bit of intensity to it.
Can you spot another FBI agent?
Fed's got a certain distinctive something about them, and generally speaking, you can pick somebody out. Locals are real good at spotting Feds. A local will spot a Fed before I will, but I'll normally be able to tell if somebody's an agent or somebody's a Fed of some sort, even if they're a federal agent in another country.
So guys, just to let you know, this is Chris Voss, of course. If you're joining us and you don't know who this is, Chris Voss, his book, Never Split the Difference, is one of the top-selling negotiation books on the market. His masterclass is the most popular masterclass right now, the most popular masterclass. We always look at speakers. If somebody's got a TED Talk, you go, oh my God, a TED Talk. Not TEDx, but TED Talk is like the top. Well, there is a new Mount Everest, and it's a masterclass, and that's what Chris has achieved. Chris used to live in LA. I have a feeling he's going to come back here. That's just my belief. He's in Vegas at this point in time, but he's really generally never home because he's always on a plane somewhere in the world. Chris, let's go back to the FBI days, and let's talk about probably some of the craziest negotiations you ever had to do. Can we touch upon the Philippines?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we worked a bunch of cases in the Philippines. The first one was real early when I became a full-time negotiator, and bad guys had an American who wanted it into their camp, and they decided that they were going to hang on to him and they were going to ask for $10 million. And the crazy thing is, people don't get kidnapped by upstanding citizens who are doing smart stuff. It's usually somebody out living a dodgy existence, or they're hanging out in a dodgy place. And this guy was chasing girls in the south of the Philippines, where there were a lot of bad guys, and they decided they didn't like it and they wanted to hang on to him over it. But as an American, they figured there was a big price tag on him. There had just been just prior to this one getting grabbed, there'd been a train wreck of a case with Western Europeans, and a $20 million ransom got paid out by Muammar Gaddafi to get the Western Europeans out. So it was a Wild West, with money getting dropped out of helicopters in that one, firefights, journalists getting grabbed. It was a combination of a Bond movie, the previous case, and also a Keystone Cops episode. I mean, it was Barney Miller, if you can remember that. I mean, it was real life is a combination of drama and comedy, and that one was like that, and that's what we walked into in our first case with the American.
This was a serious situation. This guy was going to be killed. Odds were against him.
He was going to be grabbed, and one of the things that didn't help the situation was, which happens regularly, he had no idea how much danger he was actually in. He was acting very flippant while he was in the and they're terrorists. He's literally in their captivity. They tried to do a proof of life photo of him, and just being a jerk is, generally speaking, you're not a nice guy if you're out doing stupid stuff. He flips the camera off. And so this insults the United States government. They by and large think that, he's flipping off the world. He's not really a hostage. He clearly doesn't feel like he's in any danger. Just because he doesn't think they're going to kill him doesn't mean they won't be happy to, because they've killed a lot of other people. And we negotiated that case that lasted for about 8 months. We wore the other side out so much that he ends up walking away. And 2 weeks after he walked away, the lead terrorist, if you will, called the negotiator with the Philippine National Police that I'd been coaching to congratulate him on how good of a negotiator he was, and to tell him that he was so good that he'd saved the American's life and that he deserved a promotion over it.
Wow. Guys, so Chris is, let's call him our mentor right now. We get to hang out, Chris. If you have a question, please pop it inside the chat, and I'm going to call upon you. So let's first go to Brandon Adams. Brandon, can you unmute yourself? And what's your question to Chris Voss?
Hey, Chris. Great to be in acquaintance with you. Also from Iowa. Also went to Iowa State University. Love your stuff. Dude, it's helped me close so many deals with business. But I guess my question would be, what words or phrases are the most powerful to use in closing a deal? Maybe you have a couple of examples. How would you use the wording, or what ways have you used to close deals?
Well, if I'm looking to close, if I'm at the close and I need a commitment, it's always going to be a question of where the answer is a form of no. Are you against doing this? Is this a ridiculous idea? Do you oppose? I mean, we was in the process of closing Robert Herjavec on some tickets to one of our events, and previously offered Herjavec, who's a sweetheart of a guy. I ended up offering a free ticket to our event because he had just got done paying for lunch. And we got introduced on the strength of an email. We went to Boa Steakhouse there on Sunset Boulevard, and right on the border of West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. And he wanted to meet for lunch, and he got there and he wanted to pay. So I'm talking about our event, and at the time our event tickets were about $2,000 per person. It's more than that now. And I offered him a ticket, and he shoots back to me, "Wow, that's great. How many can I buy?" Most people, like, if you offer them one free ticket, they want more than one. He starts talking about buying tickets right away. So we're going back and forth on the tickets with him, and I can't get a number out of him. And the event's selling out, and I can't get him closed on a number. My son, who runs my company, calls me on the phone. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon in LA, which means it's 7 in New York, which is where he is. And he says, you get a commitment from Herjavec right now, because by the time the sun comes up tomorrow morning, we're going to be sold out. And not only is he not going to be able to buy any, I'm going to give away his free one if he doesn't pay for the others. So at 5:04, I sent Herjavec a 2-line email. Are you against committing to 3 tickets now? Is it a ridiculous idea for you to pay for them before the business day starts in New York tomorrow? Sent that at 5:04. The email comes back 1 minute later. No, we're not against paying for the 3 tickets now. No, we'll be happy to do it within the hour. Send me the link, and my assistant will pay for it. And we had the money at 5:23. So I closed them out on a no-oriented question. If I got to get an answer now, it's always going to be on a question where the answer is going to come via no. I don't even bother with yes.
Got it. So the key is to always make sure the no is not even an option.
Well, the failing, I mean, he could, people have a hard time saying yes. So why not take advantage of that? Failing to agree, he could have said yes, I'm against it, but then he's not going to want to say yes. I mean, yes creates all sorts of anxiety in people's minds when they try to say it. So if I need a firm commitment now, and, getting somebody to say no in that fashion is also, you're kicking in the sense of loss also. Sense of loss, fear of loss, reaction to loss is the single most significant driver in human decision making. So you just kick in a loss so that if they choose a loss, it benefits against them. It benefits you for them to choose not the loss. I know I'm not explaining exactly right now, but people make decisions based on what they calculate the loss is going to be. So
That's the key. I think you said it. They calculate based upon the loss. So you've heard the saying, zero-sum game, win-win, win-win-win, all these analogies. What is the end point? The other person has to feel like they didn't lose, right? Is that the key?
Well, they got to feel, they got to feel a win. And for anybody to make a decision, if you decide to do something, not doing it has to be more expensive than doing it. And if you get somebody to see that inaction is what's going to cost them, then they're much more likely to take your pitch as opposed to an action for a gain. It's prospect theory. It's Danny Kahneman's Nobel Prize winning prospect theory from 2002. It's how people make up their minds.
Do you think you could take your book and turn it into a dating book? Could you?
I remember reading a long time ago that said that any woman would sleep with you if you just listened to her long enough. And the book teaches you how to get somebody talking.
Let me go to Harak. Harak, you have a question for Chris? Harak.
Yes, I'm here. Hey,
What's your question for Chris Voss?
hey, Chris, how are you? I'm a huge fan. Read your book a couple times, and I've seen you quite a few times out in LA. I see right behind you, you have you're showcasing Stealing Fire. That's also one of my favorite books. Huge fan of Stephen Kotler. I guess, why do you have that displayed, and how have you kind of applied that to what you do?
I started reading Kotler because if you're, a former mentor of mine, Jim Camp, used to say that negotiation was a human performance event. And if you're into human performance, then you're going to start reading about flow. Otherwise, you don't actually care about human performance. And Kotler's one of the world's leading authorities on flow. His other book, I first read The Rise of Superman, which then led me to Stealing Fire, which led me to his most recent one out with Peter Diamandis, is The Future is Faster Than You Think. But if you're going to study human performance, you're going to have to read somebody's stuff about flow, and Kotler's stuff is about flow. I mean, it's required reading, so as far as I'm concerned.
We've had Stephen Kotler speak at Metal before, guys, and he's going to be coming back. So we know Stephen, and we know if you've ever hung out with him, he's a big fan of wolves, and he's got wolves all over his property out in New Mexico. He moved. Guys, again, if you have a question for Chris, please ask it. It's open for you. Let's go over to Ryan Thompson. Ryan, unmute yourself, and what's your question for Chris Voss?
Hey, Chris, can you hear me? I got you on the too.
Hey,
how you been? How you doing, brother? I'm just wondering. I've started your book, and I'm not through it yet. But I was just wondering if you would consider all the principles sort of culturally universal, or do you think they more kind of are honed in on Western culture?
Yeah, great question. I mean, they're all derived from hostage negotiation principles, same fundamental dynamics. And every hostage negotiation team on earth uses the same skills, whether you're in Baghdad,
Right.
whether you're in Bogota. So it's human nature that it hits people on a human nature level. So, which is sort of underneath culture, if you will. I mean, you were human before you were an American. You're human before you were aware of what your gender was. You know, you go through puberty in your mid-teens, and that's kind of when you find out what gender you are. But underlying all that is human nature wiring, the limbic system, the way the limbic system works, and it's designed to work within the rules of the limbic system. So yeah, it applies to every culture.
Right on. Thanks, brother.
Let's go along with Ryan's question. The question is maybe cultural, but how about on the sexist? Is there a different technique towards women as there would be towards men?
No, there's the approach towards women is exactly the same. The only difference that we've seen is actually women have a tendency to pick this up as a skill faster than men do. It doesn't mean that they're ultimately better at it. I don't really have a great way to measure that. But I do know that they have a tendency to pick it up faster than men do. And then at top speed, I think pretty much everybody's the same if they're willing to put in the work.
The minute you hear somebody say, let me be honest with you, big red flag, right?
What's that?
Big red flag.
Yeah. I mean, it's a, you know, I know a lot of people mean it as a softener. What they're really telling you is they're worried about what they're getting ready to say. I mean, that's strictly what it is. Now, it happens to coincide very strongly with someone who's either been lying to you or they're going to lie to you. Like if I'm interviewing a subject and he says, look, let me be honest, you know, immediately I'm shooting back to him, well, it's about time. But what it really is it's a clear signal that the person that's saying this to you is worried about what they're getting ready to say. Now, that many times it's because they're getting ready to lie and they're worried you're not going to believe them. It's not always the case, but it is a clear indicator they're scared about what they're getting ready to say.
Remember somebody coming up to you saying whatever it was, and it sounded maybe not demeaning, but you weren't really accepting what they were saying, but you said to them, you're right. What? You said it as if it was a rehearsed line. What is your right? Is it a disarming technique, or is that something to push them away?
Yeah, I mean, everybody does this. Everybody doesn't do it consciously, but you're right is what you say to somebody when you just can't take it anymore. You want them to shut up.
You did it to me. Chris did it to me. I remember in February last year. You're right. Oh, man. I knew exactly what that was. Damn you, Chris.
You guys don't know, man. Once Ken starts in on you, I mean, you're going to have to give in anyway. So you might as well just give in and move on because he's going to get his way.
You're right. Chris, Vanessa Von Edwards, she spoke at Metal a while ago, and I connect with her often. She works on the whole idea of micro gestures, and you can see if somebody lies based upon the way their face is or body movement, hand movement. How much do you put into that? Since you're coming from a place to where sometimes you're negotiating over phone, you can't see what person's doing. How important is facial inflections and body movement?
All right, so I mean, there's kind of two things. There's maybe three things in there. First of all, it's all context driven. You know, people want to make broad, sweeping generalizations about indicators of deception, but it's all context driven, which means you got to have a base of what somebody looks like when they're telling the truth to understand when they come out of that. That's the way a polygraph is built, basically. Polygraph lays down your baseline for telling the truth. If somebody knows what they're doing, puts you on a polygraph, they ask you questions, what's your name? What day is it? What'd you have for breakfast? You know, what's your father's middle name? They're laying down your truth baseline. Now they got all these wires that are looking to pick up your micro gestures, your micro expressions, your temperature changes, your heart rate changes, your breathing changes, all these micro attributes. And the minute that you do something out of baseline, that's an indicator of deception. You're thinking about what you're saying, you're worried about it. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're lying, but it does indicate that now you're starting to filter. So you got to have the baseline down to begin with. Now the real problem is, if I know you're lying, so what? A bad guy's gonna lie to me all the time. My job is to get him to tell the truth. So just because I know you're lying, it doesn't help me get you to tell the truth. my next real issue, which is what, these negotiation skills are about, is how do I get you to drop your guard so you're going to open up to me? Yeah, you're lying. Everybody lies. That's no big deal. It helps to know exactly where they're lying. But again, the issue is, so what? What are you going to do now? Call them a liar? That ain't going to help. You gotta come in the back door and get them to drop their guard and tell you the truth. So micro expressions is an important part of that. But it's got to be taken within context. And if they're on the phone, almost all their expressions are just going to go straight into their tone of voice.
Right, and that's the key. You have to really understand the tone of voice. You have a tendency, and I've watched you, when someone's speaking fast, you slow them down. It's as if you deliberately make them repeat themselves to slow them down. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to absorb the data, because in any given moment, two things are going on. They're throwing more data at me than I could absorb by myself. Number one. So I want to go back over the same ground without them feeling like they're going back over the same ground, because my gut instinct, my subconscious is pulling all this in, and I might not clearly know, but I'm going to get a gut instinct as to whether or not they're being honest with me or whether they're uncomfortable. I'm trying to process it through my sort of supercomputer. I need to cover the same ground a couple of times so I get enough data, so I got a good gut feel as to what's going on here, and then I'm going to try to get them out of it if they're lying, or if there's something that they're concerned about telling me but want to tell me. I want to know that too, and I want to get that out.
Okay. Hey, we got Chris Voss with us. This is your opportunity to ask questions to him. Let's go to Andrew Cheeseman. Andrew, unmute your microphone, and what's your question for Chris? Andrew, did we lose you, Andrew?
I see him, I just don't hear him.
I don't hear you, Andrew.
Oh, I see. It's this doodad. Hey, so in your book, you talk about anchoring emotions, and I think I didn't quite understand it at the time. Can you explain what that is with a couple of examples?
Yeah, all right. And I'll give you the Brandon 3-step. How to always get a better deal with every hotel you walk into when you check in.
All right.
All right, so you got it, because no matter what, even if the hotel is full, there's more they could do for you. Every clerk behind a hotel at least has discretion to give you more membership points if you got a membership. I found that out one day because they had nothing else they could give me. So I walk up to the person, whatever I'm looking for, and I'm going to anchor them down. So I'm going to say, I'm getting ready to make your day horrible. And then I shut up. And you just watch them wilt. And, God knows what's going through their head, man. If you're working on a hotel, you've seen some crazy ass shit. Like, have I got a body in my suitcase? Am I going to sacrifice a goat in a hotel room? Am I having an orgy up there later? Are we having a satanic ritual? They've seen some crazy stuff. And all that's going to go flood through their mind. So now I'm sort of emotional anchoring them down. I'm putting them in a position where ultimately what I want is going to be a tremendous relief. So I'm going to let that sink in. And I'm going to wait. Usually they're going to get deflated, and then they're going to go, all right, what is it? Now I'm going to hit them with round two. I'm going to say, I'm going to seem like just another self-centered jerk who wants something for free that he's not entitled to. Because now I've anchored them low. I can't leave any names that they can call me. If I ask for a free upgrade, what am I? A self-centered jerk who's asking for something I'm not entitled to. I can take that out of their head in advance. Now the guy's brightening up a little bit because at least I haven't got a body in my suitcase. Now I'm going to hit him with a high question. I'm going to say, how many people are going to be angry with you if you give me a free upgrade to a suite? Because if he gives this to me, somebody's bound to get angry with him. His boss, somebody else. I got to deactivate that before it happens too. I got to get him to think about that and discard it before he makes a decision. Last hotel I checked into in Atlanta, just before the virus shut down. That was the last hotel I was in. The girl looks at me and she says, "We've got suites available, but I can't do it unless I go and ask my manager for permission." Now she's going to go in the back. If I had just made the straight ask, she's going to go in the back. She's going to say, "There's this jerk out front who wants a free suite, and I got to ask you." And you don't want me to do it, do you? But since I put her in a completely different mind frame, I can tell from her attitude she's going to go back there and she's going to fight for me for that suite. So she comes walking back out a few minutes later. She said, we can move you. We can't move you to the suite till tomorrow. Call me back at 5 o'clock. I'm going to know whether or not they're checking out early. I'm going to make the arrangements to move all your luggage for you. So we'll arrange everything for you. I just can't put you in the suite tonight, but I can put you in for the rest of the stay. That's how that goes down. You start out by making them so worried about what you're going to ask. You know, I'm going to make your day horrible, that whatever your ask ends up being, it's actually relief.
This is important. Chris, can you tell if somebody lies?
Yeah, you know, there's a number of indicators right off the bat, whether or not somebody's lying to me. People mostly lie out of fear or an inability to understand how to tell the truth. You know, they're not principally not lying from bad intent. They're just scared. They don't have a relationship. They don't know how to tell me the truth. So if somebody's lying to me, my job really is to establish a better relationship with them, to get them feel safe, to tell me whatever it is that they're scared to tell me. So I worry a lot more about establishing a connection with somebody and getting them in the right place emotionally than I do about whether or not they're lying, because I just figure people are scared to start off with. There's going to be some kind of deception at the beginning no matter what.
I'm just wondering if Carol Baskin killed her husband. That's why I was wondering if she's lying. Tiger King, have you watched it?
Did he deserve to be killed?
I don't know. She's a nut babe. Carol Baskin, she killed, we don't know. That's a different story. Okay, you saved my butt on something recently, and we have followed your technique in our men's group, our small group where we hang out. You threw something at us that really made a difference, and that is you lead with admitting you're an asshole. You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
can you explain a scenario where you need to do that and why it's so important?
well, you know, everybody's got some negative emotion banging around in their brain anyway. I mean, our limbic system, we're wired to stay in survival mode, and survival mode is largely negative. Now, when I really don't have time to spend a lot of time getting you out of whatever your negative headspace is, I'm just going to go in really hard. I'm going to drop the neutron bomb on your negative emotions. I'm going to start out by saying, like, hey, look, I'm an asshole. Because that's the worst thing that anybody can probably harbor in their head about you. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to dig that baby out as quickly as I can. Now, you know, I've used this phrase in a number of different situations. I use it to get myself out of speeding tickets. So I get stopped for a speeding ticket. Somebody's really mad at me. Somebody's getting ready to nuke me just because they're mad at me. I'm gonna start off by saying, like, hey, I'm an asshole. I mean, I was sitting down with an ex-girlfriend probably about 10 years ago, and I just wanted, you know, I just wanted to have a decent relationship with her. I mean, I wasn't trying to get back together, but I wasn't up for a crap. I remember sitting down with her, and I looked at her and I said, look, I was an asshole the entire time we were together. And she kind of relaxed, and she looked at me and she said, you know, I did a lot of stuff wrong. And I was like,
that's what you wanted.
Yeah, you did. So it's a great way to deactivate the negativity if you just don't have time for the other side's nonsense.
Let's go to Stephen Harms. Stephen, you have a question for Chris Voss?
Yes, I do. Hey, Chris, thank you for being here tonight. This is amazing. Can you tell me, how can I apply this maybe even tonight to a conversation with the people that I live with in quarantine?
Yeah, well, you got a good instinct for what they're going through, especially in quarantine. Everybody's under a lot of pressure. You know, let's just add a little bit of a tweak to what Coven used to say: seek first to understand and be understood. Seek first to demonstrate understanding in order to get your points across. I mean, what are the people that are in quarantine with you? What do they think? Whether they love you or not, and I'm sure that they do, they're tired of looking at your face. They're tired of seeing you every day. They wish the hell you comb your hair different. They wish you do something different. You know, they don't care. I mean, everybody's going stir crazy. So if I'm in quarantine with somebody, I'm probably starting out with, look, I know you're sick of looking at my face. I know you would love to wake up tomorrow morning and somebody that looked different than me would be sitting here. You know, start anticipating what they're probably going through. Ideally, you know, if you do it in a playful sort of a manner, you can deactivate their fears and get them to laugh about it at the same time. I mean, that's how I'd start that.
Thank you. That's great.
Guys, we're on with Chris Voss, who's our Metal Connect tonight. Hey, Chris, why are you a Metal member? What drew you to Metal?
You know, I got to tell you something. Fred was after me for months to show up to metal. And I'm like, geez, it's Saturday. Oh my God, I'm trying to chill out. And he just wouldn't let up. And so finally, I came to a meeting. The first meeting I came was at your house there on the hillside. And I was blown away just at the people that were there. And the meeting hadn't even started yet. And then we sat down and you ran a meeting, and it was like being at a TED conference. I mean, you put out so much quality information. And then I started to look around, and you started making me aware of who else was in the room, and the rock stars, and the accomplishments, and the speed to cool, and Will Henschel's speed to cool still sticks out of my mind as my most envious one. I mean, it was just amazing people to be around, down-to-earth people that just were interested in being around other people that wanted to do cool stuff in this world and had no pretension about who they were.
It's an amazing thing. All the rock stars that are. Speaking of rock stars, let's go to Jimmy Golden, who is a rock star, an actual rock and roll guy. What's your question, James? James, unmute yourself, buddy. Come on.
Hello, Chris. Thank you so much.
Let us see you. We got to see you, buddy. Got to see if you're lying.
I don't know if my camera's working. Can I just can I speak? Just
There you are.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Okay, great. So thanks, Chris. I've got two questions. One was, can you talk more about having fun with conflict? And then the other one is, and I think more appropriate to the times we're in, how do you find or be prepared for the black swan?
Yeah, well, your first question was having fun with conflict.
Yes.
Wait. Trying to fix that. Go ahead, Chris. Try again.
Yeah, sure.
No, that's not
one of the secrets to it really is to be curious, to be like genuinely curious. I mean, genuine curiosity is almost a playful sort of a mood. I mean, you're actually smarter when you're in a positive frame of mind. And genuine curiosity, it's impossible to be angry and genuinely curious simultaneously. Now, if you can be genuinely curious, that affect is going to come across the other side. It's going to hit the mirror neurons. It's going to have a positive impact. And it's going to put you in a position to go from being genuinely curious to actually kind of joking around about it. It's a lot of people are really good at self-effacing humor. It's when you're making fun of yourself to them. You're not making fun of them. You're making fun of you to them. And people that have caught on to that are ridiculously effective at establishing relationships with people really quickly. So if you're willing to share a laugh at your own expense, sort of regardless of the circumstance, and you might not be able to pull it off initially, depending upon how maybe intense, angry, backed into a corner somebody is. Like as a hostage negotiator, I can't start out by saying like, hey, I just flew in from Iowa. Boy, are my arms tired. Hey, the guy on the inside is not going to go for that. But at some point in time, if I can detect a change in his tone of voice where he's just not wound so tight, I could probably make him laugh at my expense and get further into him, because again, we're not laughing at me or at him, and we're not laughing at the situation, we're laughing at me. And that would be the first way I would offer to you to have fun with conflict, if it were as it were, maybe second or third step in with somebody. But finding the black swans, they're always there. I mean, there's always something the other side could do for you if they felt like it. Getting back to this hotel I checked into LA, the guy didn't have any suites. The guy's checking me in as buddies with the manager of the restaurant next door. He writes on the back of his business card, give Chris Voss 20% off on his next meal. I go next door. The waitress looks at this card. She goes, this is nothing official. I said, go ahead and show it to your manager. She comes back. She says, yeah, you're getting 20% off. I mean, people got ways of doing stuff for you that you could never imagine if you put them in a good enough mood and you get them, in a crazy kind of way to feel like if they didn't help you, they failed. Then they're going to find something to do for you. And that's, it's kind of the way I'm always looking for it from the other side.
Chris Voss is joining us. This is Metal Connect. We do this every Wednesday night. It's great to have Chris with us. If you have a question for Chris, please put it inside the chat, and then I'll call upon you. Chris, let's talk about the Masterclass thing, because I remember when Masterclasses first started coming out, we saw Ron Howard, we saw Hans Zimmer, all these incredible people, and all of a sudden you pop up there. You kind of gave us a forewarning that it was going to happen. Has that changed anything for you?
You know, it's been more people, again, will recognize me because of the Masterclass, which then it's not that you get recognized. If you're watching Masterclass, you're into learning. I mean, you're growing, you're developing. You're an interesting person. You're somebody that I would love to have a conversation with. So, you know, it gives me the opportunity to meet more interesting people. It's also, we were afraid it was going to be competitive because we've got some video products out there ourselves. We thought that people might want to do Masterclass in some of our training, and it's turned out to be a massive boost for our business across the board. It's been a great, you know, top of funnel thing for us. And, you know, they just did a fantastic job in the production. I mean, I'm honored to be a part of it. And, you know, they got a bunch of interesting people behind the scenes that are working a thing anyway. So it's a great relationship. I mean, they're great people to be associated with.
Yeah, but they approached you and you had to negotiate the deal. Did you walk out with what you wanted?
Well, we turned them down 3 times. You know, they kept throwing deals on the table that where they were taking ownership of the intellectual property, and we just don't do that. I kept turning them down, but we turned them down in a nice way. We told them what was causing us to turn them down. It was really the terms of the deal. You know, I don't screw around much with dollars. You know, you're going to offer me a dollar deal. You know, the terms are always going to be more valuable than the dollars. If you offer me reasonable dollars, I'm probably going to take your dollars. I'm going to want insanely great terms. And so we turned around and we're going back and forth. And finally I said, look, you're not, you know, they said, we promise we'll never compete with you. And I said, well, you're not always going to own this company. You go public, you're going to lose control of your intellectual property. We can't afford that. We have to have a deal where we can we retain all ownership of our IP, and anything that we do out there, you can never sue us for being competitive with you or anything, any way, shape, or form. You can't interfere in our commerce. We ended up being on the phone with David Rogier, the founder, who's a great dude. And we're going back and forth with him on it. And he says, well, you want the Christina Aguilera clause. And I'm like, all right, so what's that? She said, well, when she agreed to do the Masterclass, she said, there's a real possibility I'm going to come up with a lyric or a rhyme or a melody while I'm on camera, and I have to retain ownership of that. And so we put that clause in her contract, and, you know, anything that you come up with, you still own. And we said deal, and we cut the deal, and we made the deal.
That's a damn good deal. Let's go to, I think it's Yurli. Yurli, what is your question for Chris Voss? Unmute your mic, and let's see you on camera.
Hey, Chris. My name is Yuri, actually. Big fan of your masterclass. Amazing. Just wanted to ask you, there's so many new requirements of being politically correct, and with the Me Too movement as well. Would you happen to have any other recommendations in addition to all the techniques that you've given us? By the way, the low FM voice works amazing. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, you know, Me Too movement really. If I've run afoul of anybody, it's not what I've said; it's how I've said it. And if it's had a negative impact on them, if I've failed to notice that it's had a negative impact. So, you know, I could say, and I have said to women, like, look, you're saying a guy's mansplaining you, he's interrupting you because you're a woman. I got news for you. That guy's a jerk. He interrupts everybody he talks to. You're not special because you're a woman. You know, if I say it to him like that, the way I said it is offensive. I used a tone of voice that said, hey, you're an idiot if you don't realize this. I could say pretty much the same thing. I could say, look, you know, mansplainers, if they interrupt you, they interrupt me. You know, they're interrupting everybody. They're a jerk to everybody. The challenge is knowing the difference between somebody who's just a jerk and somebody who's being tough on you because you're a woman. And they feel it in a completely different way. So it's an awful lot of it has to do with your tone of voice. Now, if I run afoul of something, if I've said something inadvertently, and I say things inadvertently all the time, you know, if you're reading your counterpart in a moment, you know, they're going to let you know that they've been uncomfortable. And if something just came out of your mouth that you're concerned about, and you can read it on their body language, or if they've gone stone-faced on you, that's the time to say, you know what? I got a big mouth. I say stuff without paying any attention to the kind of impact it's going to have on people, and as an idiot, I will run around being completely oblivious to the challenges that women go through on a regular basis. As a man, I probably have absolutely no idea with the absolute nonsense that women have to put up with every day. They're looking for that recognition. They're looking, see Chris, to demonstrate understanding. You're gonna run afoul of somebody, whether it's a woman, whether it's somebody who's a different ethnicity than you, somebody who's a different religion. If in the course of your interaction you're willing to read them in the moment, and then some people would do it a mea culpa. I am guilty of being an asshole. You're probably going to run. You're going to deactivate 99 out of 100 of your problems.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Chris, why does someone need to hire you in Black Swan?
Okay, I got to tell you something. You renegotiate today, whether you like it or not. Everybody, we are in a renegotiation phase. We just pivoted out of crisis phase, and somebody that you deal with either has or is going to call you and say, we're renegotiating our deal. So whether you like it or not, everybody's there. We make sure that you don't give up stuff that you don't have to give up. And you might not have to give up anything. A lot of these renegotiations are testing interactions. And if your first move is to make a concession to somebody who is just testing you, you just gave away money you didn't have to give away. We just got done Robin Robbins Technology Marketing Toolkit. They got an event coming up. They had an in-person event. Coronavirus shut it down. They canceled it. They shifted to online. They had $1.5 million in sponsorship money at stake. All their sponsors wanted to pull out. We did a training session with Robin. I did a consulting session. First, I did one-on-one with her. Then I did one on me onto her team. And of the first 800,000, the first million in play, they retained $800,000. And of the last $500,000 that's still in play, they expect to retain about 75% of it.
Wow.
They were looking at a total loss of $1.2 million or $1.5 million. Everybody's looking at that now. You might not have to give any of it up. Whatever you have to give up, don't give up more than what you need to. And on top of that, they retain their relationship with every one of their sponsors. No sponsor that they had requested a full refund, and no sponsor terminated the relationship when they switched from an in-person to a virtual event. That's just an example of how we're helping people. On top of that, every one of their negotiations with their sponsors, instead of lasting 8 to 10 days or however long they would have gone, they settle them all in 2 interactions.
Wow, this is probably one of the most unique and probably best times for you right now, because everybody needs to renegotiate at this period of time. Everyone.
We're a little overwhelmed with the number of requests that we're getting on help in renegotiating. And I actually turned down an opportunity just before I came on this call because somebody's got a great idea and somebody needs a lot of renegotiation. And I texted her back and I said, if they're not putting money on the table, we don't need any more business development. We got all the business development we need right now. We're helping people who have enough at stake that they're willing to make the investment to save it. And I charged Robin Robbins less than $10,000. She had $1.5 million at stake.
A professional's expensive and amateur's a fortune. I really firmly believe that. We have a few minutes left with Chris. Get your questions in. Let's go to Lonray. Lonray, what is your question for Mr. Voss?
Lonray, hey brother, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking this time. Question, do you ever have to negotiate with yourself? For example, when you're faced with 2 tough decisions or you're trying to motivate yourself into something, do you ever have to negotiate yourself with yourself? And if you do, what does that look like?
Yeah, I can tell you something all the time, because we're naturally wired to be negative. I mean, when our natural wiring kicks in, we're naturally pessimistic. I mean, and neuroscience has laid this out for us. the sort of the center, the command post of where our emotions go is called the amygdala. And they've mapped out the amygdala. And the amygdala is 75% designed to handle negative emotion. It's all of one side. There's a left and a right side. It's all of one side and half of the other. 75% of your wiring is designed to be negative. So you gotta, it's like bathing. You gotta do emotional hygiene on a regular basis. I mean, you gotta tee yourself up in the morning. Later in the afternoon, circadian lows hitting me. I may have to get myself out of it in a variety of ways. How do I get myself out of it? I get curious. I do stupid stuff. Like I got up yesterday morning and I walked over to the sink and I was getting ready to brush my teeth, and it occurred to me how many people on planet Earth are not within 10 feet of running water when they get out of bed. I mean, by sheer numbers, just where I start with them, and there are people in LA are not 10 feet within running water when they get out of bed. So, but then when my negativity kicks in, there's another crazy hack. They did a brain science experiment where when people had a negative thought, if they just stated what that thought was, if they just labeled it, it diminished it. So if I'm worried, if I'm worried about something, worry is a version of fear. So I will literally say to myself, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. And then I'll say, fuck it, I'm not scared. Let's get this done. Because I just times in a row, and by the time I've said it to myself 3 or 4 times, I'm like, fuck that. This is fine. And I'm ready to rock. So yeah, I put this stuff on myself all the time.
Love that.
Love that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lon Ray.
Appreciate it.
By the way, Lon Ray is doing, and you and Mike have these incredible workout sessions that you guys are doing throughout. Every day, you guys have found a way to keep us in shape, and I really appreciate all the effort and all the work you're putting into that, Lon Ray. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Is he doing that with Big Mike?
No, Mike Jr.
His
But
son.
Big Mike is there. Big Mike is at all of them.
Yeah,
Big Mike is at
you
all.
guys do the crazy. You guys do that crazy dance. I've seen those guys do it at wedding receptions.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All the time. That's how we end every session.
There you go. Hey, let's go to Colin. Colin, what's your question for Chris Voss?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of begin with the disclaimer that I understand this could be a function of context, but if you're in, like you were just talking about, let's say you're going to do some consulting. Do you like to lead with the price and check their sticker shock and get it right out there? Because they're always wondering what it's going to cost. Do you like to do that first? Or do you like to more build toward it and begin your negotiation before you actually reveal what it's actually going to cost? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
No, that's a great question, because there's a great debate with whether or not you go with price first. And we never do. We never do. Not never. But what I will say, like if you ask me how much is it, I'm going to say more than you got. Ridiculously expensive.
Right.
More than you've ever paid anybody else for this kind of service ever. And then I'm going to shut up. And you're going to wait. And you're going to go like, all right, what is it? And whatever number I throw out there is going to be less than what you imagined. And you're going to feel like it's a relief, and it's probably a really good deal. And you're going to want to talk about what's going to happen around that number. Because if I throw out a high number naked like that, I mean, I've driven deals away that make no sense that they're driven away. Like my hourly rate is, and I'm here to tell you, my hourly rate is high. If you want to retain me to coach you on an hourly basis, it's $3,500 an hour. Now, I'm sitting about 2 years ago at a conference with a guy telling me about how he's got $15 million at stake. And he says, I got so much money at stake that I don't care what your rate is, I'll pay it. And I'm stupid enough to just give him my number. Instead of saying high, more than you ever paid before, I'm like, all right, he's got 15 mil at stake. He's not going to be idiotic over this. And I go, $3,500 an hour. He goes, oh, that's too much. I can't do it. He gets up and walks away. And I'm like, what kind of a bozo are you? You got $15 million at stake. You already know, based on a conversation, I'm going to coach you from 1 to 3 hours. So this might cost you $10,000. And $10,000 is too much over 15 mil. You are an idiot. And I sat there and I go, that is my own fault. I did that to myself. I trusted this guy wouldn't react emotionally. And I was dumb enough to walk into that. So I don't name a price first, but I prep you for a price where my number's actually going to be less than what you anticipated when we get into it. Because if I throw a number and I drive you away from the table, which happens a lot, then shame on me. I screwed that up.
You're gonna anchor it first, but not a lot of dance before you get to the number. Right?
It's going to be an emotional anchor. Then I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say, all right, so, but I mean, I'm also going to ask you, what happens if you lose this? I mean, if I don't coach you and this goes to hell, what happens to you? Because this loss decision that we were talking about earlier, I got to get that loss firmly fixed in your head before we proceed. You need to do a calculation, and I need you running those numbers in your head before I toss the number out.
Let's go to a very timely question coming from
Thank
Ken
you.
Kellner. Ken? Ken.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Awesome, buddy. What's your question? Good to see you. What's your question?
Nice to see you, man. Right now, everyone is renegotiating, and I wanted to know if you have anything special about rent, whether it's your own property, whether it's for your personal or for your commercial space, the office you rent, whatever.
Or home. Yeah.
As a tenant.
As a tactic to renegotiate, yeah.
Oh, but you're a tenant. You're not
A tenant, yeah.
Tenant point of view. I mean, the real issue here too is, what's your relationship with your landlord going to look like after you go through this? You could slaughter somebody in almost any negotiation, and first chance they get, they're going to pay you back in spades. I mean, the phrase "revenge is a dish that's best served cold." I mean, we used to kill people in bargaining. I mean, I just don't do it anymore. You take the last dollar on the table, you leave the other side feeling like they've got stung. They cannot wait to pay you back. They're going to make your life miserable. They're going to fail to perform. They're going to, and again, this whole thing with Kahneman, lost things twice as much as an equivalent gain, which means if you nail somebody for the equivalent theoretically of $5, they're not going to feel they're even with you until they've hit you for 10.
Oh.
And once they've hit you for 10, what do you got to get them back for? You got to hit them for 20 before you feel even. That's what this downward spiral is all about. So as a tenant right now, you got a tremendous advantage on landlords. Where do you want to be and with them when this is over, and you want them thinking about that? I mean, if I was going to proactively contact my landlord, I would say, look, and this is what we're telling people. I'd say this is a shit show. You are in one of the worst positions in the world as a landlord right now, because if I stop paying my rent, which I'm not going to do, but if I stop paying my rent, there ain't a court on the planet that's even in session right now. So, courts are shut down. This is the worst position you could possibly be in. Now, at the same time, I'm in a horrible position also. How do we work together so that we don't destroy each other while we're both in a world of shit, and that we preserve this relationship so that I could be a tenant that you want to have around for the next 1,000 years? That you're happy to have me as a tenant, and I'm happy to be your tenant. How can we put ourselves in that position? That's when you walk them into, let's talk about what the future looks like. I'm assuming you're a good tenant. I'm assuming you're not destroying the property. I'm assuming that you're keeping it clean. I'm assuming that you're paying the bills on time. This is a guy this landlord wants to retain. He's got no shortage of nightmare tenants otherwise. But if a reset is coming, how do you guys work it out so that you don't hate each other? He doesn't hate you or you don't hate him, and the resentment doesn't kick into gear where you're calling him every time there's a crack in the paint, or every time you do call him, he's not ignoring you or making you call him 5 times to come take care of something that he should come out and take care of on the first phone call. That's really the relationship to preserve. So you deactivate what he's scared of right now by saying this is a shit show. How do we work our way through this so that we're both happy to be partners when this is over?
I got to add on for that. Is there any difference when you're talking to them in person? Like I have to go through a company in order to talk to that person. When you're writing it versus talking to them in person, anything that you have to do slightly differently?
Yeah, well, if you're writing it, depending, whether or not it's going in a form of a letter or a form of an email, look at writing like the same way you would look at playing chess. You want to make one move per written communication. You don't want to make your next 7 moves. So your first move in your first written communication is to demonstrate that you understand that they are caught in the middle of a shit show, and they probably got tenants all across the board that they're worried about shutting down on them, and tenants that are going bankrupt. And it just sucks to be caught in the middle of this, and they got bills to pay too. They're looking at their income getting shut off, or they got people breathing down their neck trying to get their bills out of them. And then I'm probably closing that written communication. Is it a ridiculous idea for us to have a discussion about how we can collaborate so we don't hate each other?
Chris, I want to thank you so much for giving us time tonight and really enlightening us with what's going on. Are you ever thinking about coming back to LA?
1,000%. If I had to bet, I bet I'm back there sometime in the next year.
New report came out 2 days ago. We have the cleanest air of any city in the world as of this week. It's true. Cleanest air of any city in the world is Los Angeles.
Cleaner than Beijing? That's hard to
I can't believe it really is. Guys, I want to let's all thank Chris. Let's give it up and wave to him. Thank you so much, Chris, for spending time. Thanks a lot for being a Metal member. Everyone, I want to thank you for being part of it today. Like I said, Lauren Klopp is tomorrow, and William Quigley. This week's Metal, we have John Stoley, the former CEO of Apple. We have John McAfee, who's a crazy renegade, plus other great speakers too this Saturday. Thanks a lot for being part of Metal. Everyone, thanks a lot. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ken.
Bye, everyone.